Today is Sunday, August 16th, 2020. My name is Jorge Cruz, and I'm interviewing Lorena Ramirez for Labor Studies Voces of a Pandemic Story Collection Project. This is a collaborative project between UCLA and Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin. Please know, Ms. Ramirez, that this interview will be placed on the Digital Public Library of America and shared with Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin. If there's anything you do not wish to answer or talk about, I will honor your wishes. Also, if there is something you would like to discuss, please make sure to bring it up and we'll talk about it. Because we're not conducting an interview in person, I need to record you consenting to be interviewed. So I'll ask you a series of 6 questions. Please say, yes, I agree, or no, I do not agree after each one. So UCLA Labor Studies wishes to archive your interview, along with any other photographs and other documentation on the Digital Public Library of America. UCLA Labor Studies will retain copyright of the interview and any other materials you donate to UCLA Labor Studies. Okay, so the first question, do you give UCLA Labor Studies consent to archive your interview and your materials at the Digital Public Library of America?
Yes, I do.
Do you grant UCLA Labor Studies right, title, and interest in copyright over the interview and any materials you provide?
Yes, I do.
Okay, the third question. Do you agree to allow UCLA Labor Studies and the Digital Public Library of America to post this interview on the internet where it may be viewed by people around the world?
Yes, I do.
Okay, fourth question. Do you grant UCLA Labor Studies consent to share your interview and your materials with the Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin for inclusion in the Voces of a Pandemic Oral History mini project, which will include posting the interview on the internet?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And so I'm just going to read this little paragraph. It says, we have many questions in an online pre-interview form that we have already filled out. We use that information from the pre-interview form to help future research on this topic. The entire form is kept in a secure Voces server at the University of Texas at Austin. Before Voces sends it to the Benson Library at NIU Libraries, we would have stripped out any contact information for yourself or family members. So that will not be a part of your public file. Your public file will only be accessible at the Benson Library and NIU Libraries. So question 5, do you wish for us to share the rest of your interview and your public file available to researchers at the Benson Library?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and the last question, on occasion, the UCLA Labor Studies and Voces receive requests from journalists who wish to contact our interview subjects. We only deal with legitimate news outlets. Do you give consent for us to share your phone numbers or your email with journalists?
Yes, I do.
Okay, perfect. All right, so that's the preamble. So once we've already established that, we can move on with the interview. So the first question, I just kind of want to just as an introduction. So talk to me about one thing that brings you joy right now.
Right now, family. Family's what brings me joy.
What is it about family that brings you joy?
Well, I think especially in these times, well, with this pandemic going on, you kind of feel lonely, especially because there's not much to do but to stay in, and that's when family comes in. You know, you with a phone call or them being there for you.
Mm.
Well, it just sometimes, well, being in this pandemic makes you feel lonely, and well, having my family there makes me not so depressed at times, because sometimes you do get depressed when you're lonely. So I think that's what's brought me joy.
Yeah. And so we'll get a little bit more questions just to kind of build off that. But just another question I wanted to ask is, how do you identify? Do you identify as Latina, Latinx, Hispanic, Chicana, or any other term?
What do I consider myself as, you said?
Yeah. How do you identify yourself?
Oh, okay. As Hispanic.
Hispanic? Okay. And where are you from originally, and where do you live now?
I was born in Downey, and I live in Hesperia, California now.
Okay. And tell me a little bit about yourself. What do you do, and It's just as an introduction to kind of tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, I'm 25 years old. I'm currently working at a doctor's office. I'm a medical assistant there, and I also work at a bar on the weekends. So I'm currently working 2 jobs.
Oh, okay. Um, okay, so like, can you walk me through a day in your work life before COVID-19?
Before COVID, um, well, working in the medical field, it's always, you're always cautious of stuff, of course, because you're dealing with a lot of sick patients.
Hmm.
But I mean, pretty much the same as now, is just with not as much caution, I guess. But I mean, I work 8 to 5, so I don't know. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
um, I work 8 to 5. So you mean just how I start my day off there? Or
Yeah, yeah, like for instance, like what is it like pre-COVID, like going into the office, seeing the patients, like what was that like how did your day-to-day activities um I guess play out before the pandemic hit?
how did they play out?
Hmm. Oh, and also before we continue, can you like raise the monitor a little bit so like
Oh,
yeah, perfect. Thank you.
sorry.
No, it's okay.
Uh, how did it play out before?
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, like for
sorry.
instance, like what would you do? What was the first thing you did when you went into the office? Like what were the activities that you did? How was it like to have the patients come in? And just what was that like? Because we want to see like how that changed after COVID.
Okay. Well, I the first thing I would do is get all the rooms prepared for the doctors. And once patients started coming in, my job was I was working with them in the back office. So basically, just walking them in and getting their labs for the doctor, taking their vital signs,
Hmm.
and if any patients needed injections, just preparing those, and basically speaking with different pharmacies, calling in refills. That's what I mostly do.
Okay. Um, so how did you first learn about COVID-19? Was it through your employer? Was it through friends, family, or through the news?
It was actually through my employer. Um, we actually started wearing face masks, and they weren't mandatory, but we started wearing face masks in late late February, and I believe the everything started shutting down in mid March.
Hmm.
But I guess it didn't really well. I actually currently left that job to go back to school,
Oh.
and I left maybe like 2 weeks before
Hmm.
all the shutting down started,
Hmm.
and I'm currently working there again. But I left to go back to school. With all this happening, I started online, and um, that affected me because I online classes have always been hard for me.
Hmm.
So I'm more like an in-class learner.
Hmm.
So I actually had to go back to work um, because I wasn't making it with the unemployment,
Hmm.
and my extra income was working at the bar. So we closed there for a while. So that was hard.
So did you say that you started school before the pandemic hit? Like you decided to go back to school, or was it
I
because?
decided no, I decided to go back to school,
Mhm.
and I left the doctor's office 2 weeks before everything started shutting down.
But
So I started school, and 2 weeks later, school closed down
oh,
because yeah,
But you already knew about COVID once you started school, right? Or you didn't know
I
about
already
it?
knew about COVID.
So,
I already knew about COVID, but I didn't know it was going to, everything was going to shut down and turn out how it did.
so do you think the pandemic played a role in you deciding to go back to school?
Actually, no, not really.
Hmm.
No.
Do you think now, like 5 months into the like quarantine, what do you think about that decision of going back to school?
Um, I mean, in a way, there, I mean, in a way, I felt like it was a bad decision because I left my job and
Hmm.
I moved to Hesperia. So I kind of like moved my life over here thinking I was going to be okay with going to school,
Yeah.
but I needed that extra income, so it did affect. And although I would like to stay in school or continue going, I think it's just harder for me.
Mm. Okay. So are you currently in school now or no?
I actually just did my spring semester. I finished spring semester because that's the um, I started spring semester, I finished, and I took a summer class,
Oh.
but I haven't enrolled for fall.
What were you studying?
Well, I was finishing. I was actually starting because when I got out of high school, I enrolled into community college, and um, I never um, I never really started. You get me? Like I got my classes and then 2 weeks in I dropped them.
Oh,
So
okay.
being 25 now, I'm like, no, I think it's time to go back to school. I should go back to school. And yeah, I still have to do to start from the bottom.
What do you want to study?
I would like to study, well, I would do my prereqs for nursing. Since I'm already in the medical field, I would like to pursue
Nursing.
nursing.
How do you see that field, like nursing, with everything that's happening, right? Like of them being like essential workers. How do you see the field?
It's scary.
Mhm.
It's scary. A few of our patients have passed away from COVID, so
Mhm.
it's just scary to know um, that sometimes you actually really don't know who has COVID because
Mhm.
some people don't even have symptoms. Like um, I got COVID and I didn't have any symptoms. The only reason why I found out was because once my employer called me uh, letting me know that he needed medical assistance because a lot of our employees were out.
Mhm.
I decided to go back and I had to test. I didn't have any symptoms. I tested and I came back positive.
Oh wow.
So it's kind of scary working with sick patients and some not even knowing if they have it or not. So it's scary.
So do you feel like you were at a high exposure because of where you worked at?
Yes.
And what was it like? Like what were the feelings that you had whenever you first found out that you tested positive for COVID?
For some reason, I don't know why I was kind of embarrassed.
Really? Why?
I don't know why. I think it's just because um, social media.
Hmm.
I think it has lots to do with social media, like how people would make jokes about it.
Hmm.
Um, and when like I found that I was positive, and I don't know, I just kind of got embarrassed
Really?
in some way. Like I didn't want my friends to know,
Hmm.
you know. I don't know. I was embarrassed and scared for my parents because they're older.
Mm.
So but yeah, I was in quarantine for about a month.
Oh.
I retested positive again,
Hmm.
and I waited another 2 weeks, and finally I was negative.
Did you develop any of the symptoms of
Symptoms?
COVID?
No, I didn't have any symptoms at all.
Really? So you were asymptomatic the whole time?
Right. So
Wow.
I think that's what's scary. I mean, I'm sure there's so many people that don't get tested because they don't have any symptoms, but who knows whether they have it or not.
Exactly. So how was like to kind of like take a few steps back when you first heard about COVID? What did you think about it? Like, did you think it was uh, uh, like what were your thoughts about it? Your first thoughts about COVID?
Well, I know we heard about cases last year, like towards the end of the year,
Hmm.
and I didn't think much of it. Um, even the doctor I work for, I don't think it was something that was really um scary. I thought it was like the flu.
Mm.
Um, but then once you started hearing how many people were dying and how bad some people were getting with their symptoms, and it did get kind of scary. But honestly, towards the beginning, I didn't feel like it was something to worry about.
Did that change once you actually tested positive for COVID?
It actually changed before that.
Hmm.
It changed, I guess, when everything started shutting down.
Mm.
And and in the beginning, yeah, you would hear about people passing away or getting really bad symptoms. And I still didn't think much of it um, till I actually knew people that has lost people to COVID. That's
So,
when I started.
who did you know? Like, was it close friends? Was it family members that had passed away with COVID?
Not family members, but for example, my older brother, he has 3 friends now that have passed from COVID.
Really?
Yes. So I think once you start hearing like um, people that you know
Hmm.
losing people, then yeah, then that's when it got scary.
Yeah. And you had mentioned before too how what brings you joy is your family. So how did your family handle the fact that you tested positive? Like how were they like as far as a support group, as far as like how did the dynamic change once you realized that you were positive and that you didn't want to infect like other family members?
Well, yeah, it was scary, uh, but they were really supportive.
Hmm.
My mom and my dad actually took some time off of work because they're actually currently still working.
Mm.
Um, but they were very supportive. They were here for me, and even like my family members would call me and FaceTime me
Hmm.
and send me things through Amazon or whatever it was just to like make me feel better or something. But yeah, they were pretty supportive, so they were here.
Mm. So you think they helped you get through that?
They really did because um, the first week I was like I was a little depressed, I could say.
Mm.
Yeah, it was hard. It was hard being stuck in my room all day
Hmm.
and not knowing whether I was gonna get symptoms or not.
Mm. So kind of like living through that uncertainty, not
Right,
knowing if it was going to take like a dramatic turn at any moment.
right.
How did you keep yourself busy during that self quarantine?
Um, Honestly, the first week it was a lot of Netflix. Yeah, so it was a lot of Netflix, and then towards the second week, I think I I felt really weak, and I think it was just because I wasn't doing anything in here. I was like laying down, I was eating.
Hmm.
So towards the second week, then I was like, okay, I might watch some videos on YouTube
Hmm.
and work out at least a bit in my room because I mean there isn't much I was able to do. Um, I ordered some books on Amazon, and I literally just received one of them like a week ago.
Hmm.
So I was like, okay, well, so it didn't work out, but I mean, yeah, I think that was the only thing I was really doing that was semi-productive was working out.
That's good. Yeah. So, um, and so now that you're like COVID free, kind of reflecting on that time, how do you see the pandemic now? Like, how do you see like as far as like you know how there's some people that that don't believe that it's real, or some people kind of are still like, especially people within like amongst our age, they're going out now, they're going to parties. Like, how do you feel about that, having had COVID and having got having had to self-quarantine?
I think it's kind of crazy how everything's opening back up.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's scary. I think so many young people, the going back to how I didn't have any symptoms
Mm-hmm.
and how there's so many people out going out for drinks, going out for dinner, and really not even knowing. For example, at work, I we screen patients now before they come in.
Mm-hmm.
So we take their temperature and we ask them if they've had any symptoms. And just thinking about how many people say no, they haven't had any of those symptoms, but yet, I mean, anybody could possibly be carrying it. And I think it's scary that everything's opening back up.
Right, because you were asymptomatic too, so
Right.
you were part of that group as well. Um, how do you, let me just double check. So, um, so as far as like once you tested negative again and you returned to work, how was that like? Did you kind of just go back to how your old responsibilities, or was it a little bit different now that like you were being a little bit more cautious, or was your employer being a little bit more cautious because you had COVID?
Well, yeah, I mean, now we wear face shields, we wear double masks, gloves. Um, yeah, I mean, we try to sanitize everything,
Hmm.
the every exam room before and after each patient. So I feel like we're being pretty cautious. But I mean, regardless, I got COVID and I was being cautious. So I guess you can never be too safe either way.
Yeah, because you had been doing all this before you got COVID too, right?
Right,
So you were wearing the face mask, you were sanitizing everything, and still, despite that, you still got COVID.
right.
And you work for a rheumatologist, is that right?
Yes, I work for a rheumatologist in
How long,
Oklahoma.
how many years have you been working for that employer?
It'll be 5 years in November.
Oh, okay, so quite a while. Did your hours increase after the pandemic? Like, did you see like increase in patients, or did that change in any way?
No, actually, we used to see about 90 patients a day.
Mhm.
So now they have cut that down to 50,
Mm,
about 50 patients. So that went down for sure. Um, I'm still working my 40 hours, but patients are really gapped out or
mm,
yeah, we just don't see as many anymore right now. And a lot of them are actually through Skype and
mm.
voice video.
Oh, so it's like a virtual.
Right.
Okay. And so, how about your pay? Did you receive like the same amount of pay, or did you get an increase in pay, or how did that work?
Actually, no, not yet. No.
Oh, but do you
I'm
plan
still
on getting an increase in pay?
hopefully, I mean, I will receive my review till November.
Okay,
So, yeah, I would have to wait and see.
okay. And so you had mentioned that there were some patients that did actually pass away from COVID. Um, so was there any particular case, like a patient case that stood out for you?
Uh, yes. One of our patients, she was there even before I started. And I just remember her going in with her mom because they were both our patients.
Mhm.
And and she actually passed away when I wasn't there. Like I wasn't working there. That's when I kind of like took that break.
Mm,
So when I returned back to work, yeah, it hit me. It was sad to know that because patients they kind of become like family, because you see them so frequently, and especially with rheumatoid arthritis and lupus, and um, our patients we pretty much see them like on I don't know like at least once a month,
mm,
so they become like family.
mm.
So yeah, that one hit me pretty hard. One of them did hit me.
And the patients also, given that it's like a lot of these patients have rheumatoid arthritis, or they're seeing a rheumatologist, they tend to be older, right? So they tend to be in within the demographics to be more susceptible to
Right.
COVID. Um, so another question that I wanted to ask was, I guess how you mentioned that you see those patients frequently. Are those patients are they also like predominantly Latino as well?
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes, a lot of Latinos and a lot of African American. But yes, we see a lot of Latinos.
Have you noticed within, I mean, just within your experience, do you feel like it has been affecting disproportionately more people of color? They've been dealing as far as like more cases of COVID within your office?
Yes, and I feel it's because a lot of them are essential workers.
Mm,
A lot of them are still working or aren't able to receive unemployment. So yes, I think most are of color.
or because of just the nature of the type of work that they do. You had mentioned too that your parents were working during the pandemic. Are they also in
Right.
essential fields that um, what type of work do your parents do?
Yes, they actually both work at warehouses.
Mm,
My mom works with produce,
mm,
and she works. She works like say for example right now. I mean, of course, because all the markets, supermarkets,
mm.
are really busy. Produce is really busy, so she's been working like maybe 60 hours a week.
Oh wow. Is
Yeah.
that an increase of what she normally worked before COVID?
Yeah, she was before COVID, she was working 45 hours maybe
Mm.
a week. But yeah, she's been working about 60 hours a week.
Oh wow. And do you know if her employer had if they like implemented any safety protocols, like any mask wearing or anything to ensure the safety of their workers?
Yes, mask and gloves.
Oh, okay.
Mask and gloves.
Do you know if within your mom's job, anyone that she knows, any of her coworkers who were infected with COVID?
Actually, yes. She said that there was a few cases there.
Really?
Yeah, her human resources actually told her the other day that they're able to miss, but just know that they won't be getting paid. But that they're able to miss because there's so many cases of COVID at the warehouse. So
So they didn't necessarily shut down the plant, they just allowed those employees to go home
stay
without
home.
unpaid sick leave?
Right.
Wow. Okay. And so how did you feel about that? Like your mom going to work, your mom being exposed to other people with COVID, especially at her age. Like, how did you feel about that?
Uh, I tell her almost every day like that she needs to leave that job.
Hmm.
She's been there for almost 25 years. Yeah, almost since um yeah, maybe about 26 years, and she gets paid
Oh.
minimum wage.
Hmm.
So I always tell her that she needs to leave that place. But
Hmm.
I think she just feels like at her age, she's 64, no one will hire her, and she feels that she still needs to work to provide. So it's hard.
Yeah. I mean, that's unfortunate. What about your dad? What kind of work does he do?
He works at a warehouse. He's a forklift driver.
Mm. And so did his hours increase also after the pandemic?
His actually no, they actually decreased.
Oh. Was he so he was getting lower income afterwards.
Right.
How did he handle the drop in his income?
Um, Pretty difficult. I think on top of making less money, he just felt um I mean I felt like he was a little depressed
Mm,
in that way. Being at home while my mom's working more hours, I think it made him feel a little less because he's not providing as much.
mm.
So I think it's hard for him also.
Do you think that's also like maybe part of the Latino culture too, that kind of like exonerates like the male is the head of the household, the male is a provider, and for that dynamic to change during the pandemic, where his hours were cut through no fault of his own, right? But
Right.
it's kind of like you said, he got depressed because of that.
Yes, I think it has a lot to do with that. It's always the man should provide more.
Hmm.
I feel like, yeah, it got I feel like it got to him in a way, and not to be able to provide as he usually does.
How did he cope?
Uh, Honestly, he doesn't do much.
Hmm.
I've noticed like he stays in his room.
Mm.
He
Is
just stays in his room.
is that a change of behavior than how he was before?
Um, Before I think he would spend more time in the living room or in the kitchen with us, but no, I feel like um asking even like me or my mom for money,
Hmm.
um he because I mean there's times that he has, for gas or whatever, and I feel like he gets embarrassed because of it. So I feel like that's why he's just been more to himself.
Mm. And do you know if anyone in his job had COVID, was exposed to COVID?
Honestly, I actually really wouldn't know. He doesn't talk much about it
Oh,
like my mom does.
oh, okay. So it's also like there might be cases, but he just wouldn't necessarily talk about it.
Right.
Hmm. Okay. And how have you kind of dealt with all of that, like as a family, like supporting one another, being there for one another, as all of you kind of like struggle in different ways through the pandemic?
Um, I always let them know that I'm here for them, whether it's financially or talking emotionally.
Hmm.
So I mean, that's all. I communicate with them verbally, letting them know
Hmm.
for the most part.
Hmm. So like during this whole like crisis, have you found any moments of joy? Well, I know you said at home you find joy with your family, but what about at work? Has there been any kind of like small moments of joy that you've experienced during this time?
Mm. Honestly, I mean, the only joy I felt was actually getting my job back because I need the income, but it's just different, I feel like now.
Hmm. And so you mentioned that at one point that you were dealing with unemployment, right? So how was that to like, were you able to get unemployment right away? Did you have to wait? Was it enough to cover the expenses, or how did that change as far as the finances?
So in the beginning, it was hard because it did take a while to receive my unemployment.
Hmm.
And at that time, I wasn't really saving because of the bills I was paying at home. So um, it did take a while for it to hit. So it was hard in the beginning,
Hmm.
but it was enough to get by.
Hmm.
It was enough to get by, um, but not enough to help my parents out like I was before. So
Mm.
it was hard.
So do you think, so have your spending habits changed? Like how have the way that you manage your money, has that also changed?
Yes. I try to save more than before.
Hmm. Did you have many savings before or no?
I had a small savings
Hmm.
that got me by, but I think for the fact that unemployment took a while to hit, it was just scary to see my savings go down lower and lower. So I for sure, right now that I'm working again, I've tried saving more and not um spend too much on unnecessary things.
Hmm. And so you kind of mentioned too that So it's kind of like changed the way that you manage your finances, and it's also has it also changed the way you manage not only your physical health but also your mental health? Like, have you been like maybe meditating more or like doing more relaxation techniques? Talk to me a little bit more about how you've been coping in that sense.
Okay, well, I was actually just speaking to my niece about this last night. While I was quarantined, maybe because I wasn't doing much, it was so hard for me to go to bed at night.
Mm.
So I started listening to chakra music, like the chakras, like how to align your chakras
What is
and
chakra? What is that?
um I don't even know how to explain it, but it's it's like different part of your bodies. You've never heard of chakras?
Oh, is
It's
that the
like
internal?
the internal, right?
Oh, okay, like your
So
internal
there's
rhythms.
yeah, and it's kind of like meditating.
Okay.
So that's helped a lot actually. I put it on at night and I end up knocking out. So that helped. Meditation at night.
Mm. So you've been doing that every night, like,
When I feel like I can't sleep, yes.
and
But
you feel it makes a difference?
I feel like it has.
So you think you'll
I feel
continue?
like I sleep, and I sleep through. It's kind of it's not well, it's not like hypnotized. How do you say like
Hypnotic, maybe?
yeah, like it's nothing like that. But I feel like I sleep throughout the night.
Hmm.
Like there's I would dream a lot before, but I feel like I don't dream as much.
Really? Is that good or bad?
I think that's good. I feel like my mind's resting.
Do you feel more refreshed in the morning?
I do.
Mm.
Mm.
So how would chakra, like, how can you like give me a little like preview of what that would be?
Well, it's actually just like meditation music.
Oh, okay.
So like what I've been doing is like breathing in and out,
Mhm.
um and with the music, I don't know, it like relaxes my body or and I don't know, I just knock out.
That's good. How did you find out about it?
My mom,
Oh, so she's been doing it before, or she's.
my mom was doing that before, and I told her when I was in here, like stuck inside my room, that I wasn't able to sleep.
Hmm.
And she told me, "Oh, we'll put chakras on YouTube." So I started listening to it, and that helped me.
So, do you think culturally were there any like home remedies that you did that were not necessarily like Western types of medicines, more like maybe cultural types of medicine, like medicine practices, like this in this case, like meditation, like which is like a non-Western type of relaxation. Were there other methods that you also used?
Uh, just teas in the morning and at night. My mom was making me like a tea with ginger, cinnamon, onion, garlic. Um, so I was just drinking more teas and meditating.
Was this all separate or was this all together?
No, that was all together. It
Oh,
was like ginger, yeah, ginger, onion, cinnamon, garlic. Yeah, it was all that together.
how did it taste?
It wasn't bad actually. Supposedly, because of the onion and the garlic,
Mhm.
it it helps you from not getting sick.
Did you feel like it did help when you drank the tea?
I mean, I was drinking it because that's what my mom was making me, but I mean, I didn't get any symptoms. I don't know if it's because of the tea,
Mhm.
I mean, I was drinking them every morning and night.
Mhm. So would you say did you like develop also any like spiritual coping mechanisms as well, like any type of religious type of I guess ways of coping as well?
Um, I mean, I pray, and I think I would pray a little more when I found out I had COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, I'm used to praying each morning,
Mhm.
But I was praying to God that my like that um I wouldn't experience symptoms, or that my parents wouldn't experience symptoms.
Mhm.
Yeah, that was pretty much.
Okay. Um, and so how's it like going out now with the whole quarantine? Like, have you been going out much now, or have you just kind of been staying home most of the time?
Yeah, I've been staying home actually.
Mm.
I've been going to work, coming back home, going to work, going back home. Um, I mentioned that I was working at a bar,
Mhm.
and I haven't been working there in a few months,
Mhm.
um, for the same reason, that I got infected with COVID. But my manager called me and she put me on the schedule for this coming up weekend.
Mm.
And I still haven't talked to her, but I've been meaning to tell her that I actually don't want to go back for
Mm.
the same reason that there's just so many people out.
Yeah. How do you feel though that now that you've already had COVID, do you feel more safe or less safe to go outside?
I feel less safe.
Mm. Why is that?
I um I don't know. I think it's just the same reason that people could be out having it and not knowing it.
Hmm.
And I think it's just I don't want it's mostly my parents. Like I wouldn't want them to catch COVID, and
Hmm.
them being older. I just don't want to put them at risk.
Mm. So would you say you're more cautious now than you were once than you were before?
Yes.
Just because you know like
Sure.
it's you can have it and not know and to protect
Right.
those. So you think it's more about protecting those around you than it is protecting yourself, or do you think it's like a little bit of both?
It's both.
Hmm.
Um, but it's just like I didn't have symptoms, but not because I didn't have symptoms means that my parents could catch it and not get symptoms.
Hmm.
So I think that's what makes it scary. Like not knowing how other people around me will how their bodies will react to
Right,
getting COVID.
that's true.
That's what makes it scary.
So as far as like your future plans, what are they now? Like what do you hope to do in the future? Have those changed because of the pandemic, or yeah, tell me a little bit more about that.
Um, for sure, I know I want to go back to school,
Hmm.
especially to be able to help my parents more.
Hmm.
But it just makes it hard because I'm not sure when um, schools will open back up.
Hmm.
And even if they were to open back up, I mean, of course, that would be scary also for me.
Yeah,
So,
that's true.
but that is something I want to do.
And you said
Continue with
nursing,
school,
right? Nursing.
nursing.
Do you think that'll take on a whole new meaning, like after this pandemic, like the role nurses play in societies and how you view that position?
Yes, for sure. I mean, I feel like they do much more than doctors, honestly. Like they do doctors' hard work. So,
Hmm. So you think they're like they're in the front lines, right? They're
right,
there to help. And that's uh having experienced COVID, do you feel like that's gonna like push you to be there for other people also when they're sick?
for sure. Yes.
That's good. So kind of just to like, and just we're in the last stages, so I just have a couple more questions. Kind of to look at the broader picture too. I mean, we are going through like a health crisis, but we're also going through a social crisis as well, right? With all the protests that have been going on the streets, with an election this year. Um, what are your thoughts on that? How do you see, the protests that have been happening, the election that we're going to have in November, and all this happening during a health crisis?
Um, I don't know. It's like it's been so hard Um, because honestly, I mean, the two people that are going for president, it's just like, first of all, it's crazy, but I feel because of the pandemic, I haven't really, like, honestly, I sometimes forget that it's almost November
Mm-hmm.
and elections are almost here
Mm-hmm.
because of all the craziness that's happening. So I can say I haven't really sat down and thought about it.
Mm. But do you feel like, given all that's happened with how it's kind of been handled on a federal level, do you feel more inclined to participate as far as like voting, or do you feel less inclined?
No, I would feel more inclined.
Mm-hmm.
But but yeah, it's just scary. I think it's just scary. Not knowing. I mean, yeah, we could go out and vote,
Mm-hmm.
but like, are our votes actually really, do they really matter?
Mm. Has that changed? Did you also have the same mentality before, or has that changed like after?
Um, I think after the last election,
Mm.
it kind of made me think, like, does it really matter?
The 2016 one, right?
Right, yes.
Mm.
But I mean, yeah, I mean, I've been voting since I turned 18. So of course I'm gonna vote. I'm gonna do my part.
Mm-hmm.
And tell the people I know, hey, you we can complain, but we can go vote also. But it's just like, does it really matter? I don't know. I hope it does.
Mm. Okay. So as we conclude the conversation, is there anything else that you would like to share with me about your experience with COVID that I haven't asked you, or is there anything else maybe that came into mind that we didn't really like talk about, but that you feel like is kind of important to talk about?
Um, I'm just like, uh, I think no, I think that was it. I don't know.
No, I mean that was good. That was a pretty good conversation. We had like we talked about a lot of different things. So yeah, I mean, I think those are all the questions that I have for now. Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to speak, and I'm glad to hear that you recovered from COVID, and that you're doing well now. But yeah, if I don't have any more questions, so I think we can conclude the interview at this point. So I'll go ahead and stop recording now.